I came outside to find a private property, no trespassing sign stuck in the middle of my lawn. Confused, I checked the property map and realized someone was trying to claim a piece of my land. Instead of arguing, I paid a surveyor to mark the exact boundaries. Days later, the same person opened their door to find a tall, solid fence built directly along the real property line, cutting off part of their driveway. I'm a 45-year-old guy, and I've lived in my house in Tampa, Florida for over 15 years now. It's nothing fancy, just a quiet neighborhood with decent folks and a lot of retirees. My late wife and I picked it together. It's been my home and my peace. So one random Tuesday morning, I walk outside like I always do, coffee in hand, to grab the paper off the driveway. I glance at the yard and freeze. Right there, dead center in my lawn, a big red and white sign staked into the ground. Private property, no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Underneath, in smaller print, it had a name, Richard Barnes. Now let me back up for a second. Richard Barnes is my neighbor to the right. He bought the house about a year ago, mid to late 50s. Balding. Drives a black Chevy SUV. We'd said hi a few times, small talk over the fence. Never had a real conversation. But this was crazy. I walked over and took a better look. The sign was solid metal, not some flimsy plastic job. It was planted deep, like he meant for it to stay. Attached was a plastic sleeve with a laminated note saying something like, "This section of land is now under ownership of Richard Barnes. Do not trespass." I just stood there staring. It didn't make sense. That part of the lawn is definitely mine. I mow it. I water it. I even planted 2 rose bushes there last spring. So I go inside, pull out my old paperwork from when I bought the house, property deed, plot map, the whole packet. I spread it out on the kitchen table and start tracing the lines. Sure enough, that section. Hell, a few feet past that section is still within my lot. No ambiguity. But I don't go charging over to Richard's place yelling. I'm not that guy. I figured maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he got confused, or the previous owner told him something wrong. So I walk over, knock on his door. He opens it. Doesn't say hello. Doesn't smile. Just stares. I say, "Hey Richard, morning. I saw a sign on my lawn, your name's on it. I think there might be a mix-up about the property line." He doesn't even blink. There's no mix-up. That land belongs to me. I laugh a little, thinking maybe he's joking. I've got the deed and map inside. Bought this house in 2008. That spot's on my side. Want to take a look together? He folds his arms. I had my own survey done. The driveway and that strip of land are mine now. You've been encroaching since you moved in. It's over. I said, "What survey? Who did it? Can I see the report?" And he goes, "I don't have to show you anything. Talk to your lawyer if you have a problem." Told them I wanted a 6-foot privacy fence, thick wood panels, reinforced posts. I wanted it to last decades. We scheduled the build for the following week. Word must have gotten out quick because 3 days later, I come home from work and Richard is standing in his driveway, staring at the orange flags like they personally offended him. I wave and go inside. Don't even try to talk. Next morning, I hear banging. I look outside. Richard's trying to move the flags. He's got gloves and a shovel. He's digging them up. I called the surveyor right away, who told me to take photos and call the sheriff. That survey is a legal document. Tampering with it is not just shady, it can actually be a criminal offense. So I took pictures. Then I told the deputy what happened. They came by. Didn't arrest him, but they gave him a warning and told him to back off, or the next time he would be charged. He didn't say a word to me after that. The fence company arrived on schedule. They worked fast. The whole thing went up in 2 days. It looked amazing, deep brown wood, tall enough to block the view entirely. And here's where it gets really fun. Once the fence was up, it cut right through the edge of Richard's driveway. The way his house is positioned, his driveway curves out slightly into what was always my land. He'd been using that curve to pull his SUV in without thinking. No, the fence was there. The first time he tried to pull in, his back tires bumped into the fence. Couldn't turn. Couldn't reverse the angle. He had to park halfway on the street. I stood in my window and watched him get out of the car, slam the door, and just stare at the fence. He didn't ring my bell. Didn't say a word. But the expression on his face was pure fire. He knew. He knew I'd beat him without even raising my voice. So after the fence went up and cut through part of his driveway, Richard stopped speaking to me completely. He'd drive past my house without even looking my way. No waves. No nods. Just a cold, bitter silence. I figured that was it. He'd stew for a while, then move on. But no, that man was just getting started. A few weeks go by. I think everything's calm. Then one night, around 1:30 a.m., I hear this low rumbling sound outside. Not thunder. Not a car. A sort of mechanical whine. I get up, peek through the blinds, and there he is, Richard, in his driveway, using a power saw to cut through the section of his pavement that ran into my side of the fence. In the dark. With a floodlight hooked to his garage. At first, I thought, okay, maybe he's finally accepting the line and just trimming the driveway to avoid future issues. But no. This man starts dragging rebar and concrete blocks into the gap. like he's planning to extend his driveway onto my side, behind the fence. That's when I grabbed my phone and started filming. I called the non-emergency police line and said, "Hey, remember my neighbor from the survey incident? He's now doing midnight construction on my property." Cops showed up 20 minutes later. By then, Richard had poured a bag of fast-set cement into a shallow trench he dug just past the fence line. He was still smoothing it out with a trowel when the cruiser rolled up. They talked to him. He tried to play dumb at first, claiming he didn't realize it was over the line. I handed the officers the survey report, photos, timestamps, everything. They made him stop right there. Told him if he touched that area again without a permit or proof of ownership, it would be considered trespassing with property damage. He stood there, holding that trowel, jaw tight, just nodding. He didn't speak to me. But his eyes? His eyes spoke plenty. I thought, again, that maybe this would be the end. But I underestimated how petty Richard really was. About a week later, I start getting these anonymous letters in my mailbox. No return address. Printed on cheap paper. They were typed, not handwritten. Each one was worse than the last. First one. You're a thief and a liar. You'll pay for stealing what isn't yours. Second one. Enjoy your little fence while it lasts. Accidents happen. Third one. Nice house. Be ashamed if something happened to it. I took them to the cops again. They said without proof he sent them, there wasn't much they could do. But they did start a file. Told me to keep everything, including envelopes. By now, I'd had enough. I installed motion lights, cameras, front yard, backyard, sides, even one up in the big oak tree that looks out at the whole street. Connected them all to cloud storage. Got alerts sent to my phone. And guess what? 4 nights later, around 2:17 a.m., I get a notification. Motion detected. Back fence. I open the camera feed and there he is. Richard. Standing at the fence line with a crowbar. He's trying to pry a plank loose. I called the cops right there while watching him on my screen. They caught him on the side of my yard before he could slip back. Didn't even get a chance to lie. Now, here's where the twist hits. When they searched him, they didn't just find the crowbar. They found a folded-up printout of the survey map I gave them weeks earlier. The one that proves that line is mine. Which means he knew. The whole time. He knew it was my land. He'd just been trying to mess with me, hoping to wear me down. He got taken in that night for attempted property damage and trespassing. You'd think that would shut the whole thing down. But nah, this guy's pride? Bigger than his common sense. Because a few days after that arrest, I got a letter. Not from him. From his lawyer. Turns out, Richard was now suing me for loss of property usage and unjust boundary claims. He was trying to take me to civil court. I get this letter from Richard's lawyer. It's printed on thick paper, formal as hell, with some fancy office header. It basically says Richard is suing me for damages. Claiming I maliciously blocked access to his property and deprived him of functional driveway space, which apparently caused him emotional distress and loss of property value. You can't make this stuff up. He's asking for $18,000 in compensation. I laughed out loud when I read it, then read it again because I thought maybe I misunderstood. But no, this man, who trespassed, threatened, and tried to destroy my fence, was trying to drag me into court. I handed everything to my lawyer, a local guy named Scott. Chill dude, late 30s, no nonsense. He reads the letter and just shakes his head. This guy's delusional, he says. But we can't ignore it. So we file a formal response, submit the survey report, the camera footage, the police report, and my property deed, all neat, labeled, and stapled. Scott even includes printouts of the anonymous letters and the time-stamped screenshots from my cloud camera feed. Weeks go by, and then the court date lands. Now, here's where things really twist. 2 days before the hearing, Scott calls me. Hey, he says, you're not going to believe this. Richard's lawyer just quit the case. Filed a motion to withdraw. Apparently, the guy found out Richard lied about a lot of things, like claiming the survey wasn't real, saying I had no deed, and denying there were any police warnings. Once the lawyer saw the evidence we submitted, he dropped him cold. But Richard? He still showed up to court, representing himself. I walk into the courtroom that morning and there he is, tie loose around his neck, holding a manila folder stuffed with random papers. He looked nervous but still had that smug, I'm gonna win face. Now here's the twist inside the twist. As the hearing starts and we lay everything out, maps, photos, reports, Richard suddenly changes strategy. He stands up and tells the judge, I've discovered new documents that show the property line was redefined in 1997 due to utility easements. I blink. What? He pulls out this grainy, barely legible copy of something that looks like an old subdivision plat map. Claims the easement shift gave him the extra driveway space. The judge raises an eyebrow and says, okay, did you file this before the hearing? No, Your Honor. Did you provide a copy to the defendant? No, I just found it yesterday. Scott leans over and whispers to me, watch this. He just nuked his own credibility. And yeah, the judge shuts it down. Says unless it's verified and properly submitted, it's meaningless. But here's the kicker. Later that week, Scott looks deeper into the document Richard tried to pass off. And what he finds? It wasn't even from our neighborhood. It was from a completely different county, 3 towns over. The guy had printed off an old online map, erased the heading, and tried to use that as evidence. So now we're not just talking civil issues, we're talking fraud. Scott reports it to the court, and a new hearing is scheduled to consider whether Richard violated court ethics and filed false documents. You'd think this would break him, that he'd back off, finally get the message. But nope. Richard decides to double down. That same week, my mailbox gets smashed in. Not dented, obliterated. Bent post, shattered box, mail all over the yard. Coincidence? Maybe. But then 2 days later, someone throws a bag of nails across my driveway. My tires pick up 3 of them before I realize what happened. And just to really top it off, my front flower bed, the one with the roses my wife and I planted together, gets torn up overnight. Not animals. Boot prints. Deep ones. I send everything, photos, security footage, timestamps, to the sheriff's office. They open an official investigation. And then, just when I think I've seen it all, a local real estate agent knocks on my door. She introduces herself and says, "Hi, Mr. Me. I wanted to let you know your neighbor, Richard Barnes, has listed his house for sale. And he gave your phone number as a character reference." I laughed right in her face. Politely. But still, I ask her, did he mention that he's in a legal battle with me? Or that he damaged my property? She looks stunned. He said you were a longtime friend. So now the guy's trying to sell his house, probably to escape the mess, and using me as a fake reference. I tell her everything. I even send her a copy of the court records. A day later, the listing disappears. Poof. And Richard? Well, let's just say the look he gave me from across the street after that said everything. He knew the walls were closing in. And they were. So after the whole fake map incident, the court set a follow-up hearing. This time it wasn't just about the original civil claim. Now Richard had to answer for submitting false documents. And the judge was not playing around. We walk into court again. I've got my lawyer, Scott. He's calm, collected, ready to go. Richard shows up alone again, looking rough. No tie this time. Just a wrinkled shirt and a pile of papers. The judge starts off by asking Richard straight up, "Mr. Barnes, can you explain why you submitted a subdivision map from another county and claimed it was related to your property?" Richard stammers, says something about honest mistake and misfiling. Scott shows the court the real subdivision plat for our neighborhood. Clean, clear, verified. It shows the original property lines haven't changed since the lots were developed. Then we drop the hammer. Scott presents a timeline. A full list of everything Richard did. The trespassing sign, digging at night, cement pouring behind the fence, tampering with the survey flags, cutting fence boards, filing false evidence, harassment letters, vandalism to my mailbox, driveway, and flower bed, and we have photo and video proof for most of it. Plus the police reports. Then comes the cherry on top. Remember those security cameras I installed? Well, one of them, hidden up in the oak tree, caught a very clear, high-res video of Richard throwing nails across my driveway. Face, car, license plate, all of it. We show it to the judge. There's dead silence in the courtroom. The judge looks straight at Richard and says, "You've not only wasted this court's time with a false claim, you've committed multiple acts of trespass, property damage, and potential fraud." Then the judge turns to my lawyer and says, "Do you wish to file a counterclaim?" Scott was ready. "Yes, Your Honor. We're filing for full damages, cost of the survey, fence installation, legal fees, and repairs to the property, including tire damage, mailbox, and landscaping. Total, $26,900. And you know what? We won. The court ruled in our favor. Richard was ordered to pay every single dollar. Judge even put in a temporary restraining order for 6 months. Richard wasn't allowed to come within 50 feet of my property. That included even standing near the fence. He tried to appeal. He lost. Then about 3 weeks after the ruling, I noticed something new, a for sale sign in his yard. This time it stuck. He never spoke to me again. And when the moving truck pulled up, I stood on my front porch, coffee in hand, and watched him pack that black Chevy full of boxes. Right before he drove off, I swear, he looked at me one last time. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there. Because I didn't need to say a thing. The fence was still there. And so was the truth. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it just needs to be done right.